So let's talk about expressions. Get started, we'll take our statements.pl and we'll go ahead and we'll make a copy of that. And we'll call it expressions.pl and open that. And we'll go ahead and we'll start by making an expression. So we'll say my $x equals 42. And we'll print that value out here in this message function. We'll just say $x. And we'll save that and run it, and you'll see we get a 42 down here. So in this case, we can see that 42 is an expression that has a value of 42, and it's getting assigned to this variable, and that variable is getting printed out here. And that all seems very obvious. What's not obvious here is that this entire statement is an expression, and in fact, this entire statement is an expression, and in fact, every statement in Perl is an expression, and there are expressions within expressions. Everything is an expression. So if we were to do, instead of this 42, if we were to do something like 3 plus 7 times 10 and save that, now what do we expect to get printed out here? Well, this would depend really on whether the addition happens first or the multiplication happens first. So if the 3 plus 7 happens first, 3 plus 7 is 10, and 10 times 10 is 100, we would expect 100 to be the result. If the 7 times 10 is evaluated first, then that's 70, and the 3 then gets added to 70 for 73. So our result would really depend on that. I happen to know the answer, but I'm going to go ahead and run this, and we can see that 73 is the answer, so the multiplication is happening before the addition. That's not what we intended to have happen. We can use parentheses to force the expression to get evaluated in a certain order. And now the 3 plus 7 will be evaluated first, and our result will be 100. So we'll go ahead and run this, and there's our result. What controls this is something called operator precedence, and that's covered later in the course, and there's charts and tables, and you'll really get to understand that in some detail if you want to. But the important thing to remember, and I don't have the operator precedence chart committed to memory, and I don't think very many people actually bother with that. The important thing to remember is if you need for things to be evaluated in a particular order, then use the parentheses. Otherwise, if you have it like this, then whoever comes along to read it later, you may know and you may actually mean for this multiplication to happen first, but whoever comes along to read it later may not know that. And in fact, you may not remember that a year from now. And you're going to come and you're going to look at it and you're going to go, you're going to have to pull out the table and look at it and figure it out. It's so much easier to just use the parentheses, even if the parentheses are the default order anyway. So let's just take a look at one other aspect of expressions in Perl. Because everything is an expression, you can do things like this. And so if this expression evaluates to false, which in Perl means it would be a 0 or an empty string, then this message will be displayed. But since this does not evaluate to false, this expression here never gets evaluated, and so this message will never get displayed. We'll go ahead and save that and run it, and you can see that we just get the message 73. We do not get the message foo. If, on the other hand, this were a 0, and we save that and run it, now we get the message foo and we get the message 1 because message happens to return true. It happens to return a 1 value. And so that's getting assigned to the X. And so we're printing out both of those values. This is an important feature, and you will see this kind of thing done all the time in Perl code that you run across and that you read. So it's important to understand a couple of things. 1, true and false. All expressions can be evaluated as either true or false. 0 is false, empty string is false, and the undefined value are all considered false. Anything else is true. And we'll cover all of the different types of operators later. You can use logical operators to actually decide what code gets executed, and you can even do side effect things like printing out a message. I don't recommend that you do that in code that anybody else is ever going to have to read, but you need to understand that it works that way because you will see code like that, and occasionally something like this might come in handy for you. So that is expressions in a nutshell. Just remember that all statements in Perl are considered expressions. They get evaluated in a particular order. You can control that order with parentheses, and you can even use that order to selectively execute code.